Morning everybody, and it's Thursday the 14th of January and it's blog number 9, and I'm looking out and it's pouring with rain, and yeah, I took the dog out for a walk and suddenly realised that when I'd got to my lovely promenade, that the promenade was empty. Nobody had gone out because it was raining, and I thought to myself, well, why? Why has nobody gone out? Because it's raining. Okay, it's raining, but there's no such thing as bad weather. It's always just being badly dressed. So I suddenly realised that by doing this, I could have my promenade to myself. I could even, for a while, take my mask off because nobody else was around. And then it got me thinking that quite often, people don't really find a different way, instead of moaning, for instance, about how busy everything is when everybody goes out for a walk, like sheep at the same time, you could think to yourself, okay, well, why don't I go out when it's raining? And then nobody will be around and I get the place to myself. And I remember that I was lucky enough a number of years ago to have a cottage at the Witterings, and everybody in the summer would moan, all the residents would moan that if it was a nice sunny day, it would take hours for the queue to clear if you were trying to get back from, say, Chichester to get back to the Witterings. And I thought to myself, well, hang on a minute, there's got to be a better way around this. And in fact, it was a secret, just known to the residents, and I'm now telling you, that you didn't have to wait for an hour. You could go a different way and go round via East Wittering and be there in about 10 minutes. Yet all those people for all those years just did the same thing, staying in the same queue, moaning about it and doing absolutely nothing about finding a different way. And I guess that's what this book is all about, to find a different way of living. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But through disaster and trauma, many of my clients have found different ways and new ways of living. So we go on to the chapter that I'm going to talk about next, chapter 1, called Moments of Time. So I want you to think, sort of imagine that you're enjoying a flight to your holiday destination. Oh God, wouldn't it be lovely for all of us to have holidays? When suddenly, without warning, the jet you're in starts to plummet down to earth, totally out of control. Passengers are screaming and shouting and crying, and there are terrified looks all round. People might be at the last minute trying to text someone, but there really wasn't much time. What would you be thinking about during those moments of descent as you seemingly faced certain death? So this actually happened. A British Airways jet came within seconds of disaster over Africa a number of years ago after a passenger stormed into the cockpit and tried to seize controls. During the struggle, the autopilot became disengaged and the jumbo jet plunged thousands of feet through the air. Thankfully, on that occasion, the pilot regained control of the plane just before the point of no return and landed it safely at a nearby airport. So as a psychologist and trauma expert, I helped some of those passengers who'd been on that flight and were left suffering from what we called, as I've told you before, post-traumatic stress, which, remember, includes reactions such as reliving the incident through flashbacks, nightmares, feeling emotionally overwhelmed, having anxiety and sudden exhaustion. The rest of us who were not there, thank goodness, can never really know how we may have reacted in that near-death situation. But we can imagine what thoughts might have been going through our minds with any second to live. For passengers on board those flights, those seconds seemed like an eternity. So do any of us really know what's destined for us? None of those passengers could have foreseen that they were to experience such a close shave with death. Similarly, those working in the New York World Trade Center had known that terrorists how could they know that terrorists would fly aeroplanes into their place of work? How could tourists enjoying the Christmas break in Thailand have known that a huge tsunami would kill hundreds of thousands of people around them? And likewise, how could the London commuters have known that on the 7th of July 2005 there would be suicide bombers who were intending to detonate their backpacks full of explosives at various central London destinations? Then again in 2010-11 there were earthquakes in Haiti, Chile, New Zealand, off the coast of Japan, and then floods in Pakistan. Australia and Japan have caused further unexpected deaths and devastation. We go on then in 2017 with the Manchester Arena deadly bombing of young people who were attending an Ariana Grande concert. And also in that year was the Westminster Bridge, then London Bridge and Borough Market attack on people walking there. Finally, well, never finally, unfortunately, another attack in 2018 on Parliament, and 2019 on London Bridge. Then 2020 comes and we have the world pandemic of COVID-19. Sorry if this seems a little bit miserable, but out of misery comes hope, as they say. Gillian Hicks survived the London bombings, but with horrific injuries. You may have heard about her from the news. She lost both her legs. And despite this, many months of being in hospital, she walked onto the stage at an ITV BAFTA award ceremony and made her own personal observation of that fateful day in business. So she walked, by the way, via her prosthetic legs. So she said that, like many others in business, she'd been a workaholic, but through nearly dying in this incident, and despite having her legs amputated, she realised that she was just beginning to really appreciate life. She then gently but powerfully reminded the audience to remember to live. She had realised that many of us may forget to do this. So I did work with many of the survivors from most of these events, and whilst awaiting their own possible death through suffocating tombs of the London Underground, they had to witness many horrific things, such as people dying around them, being surrounded by severed limbs, blood and blood-curdling screams. For those in Tavistock Square, their normal surroundings was turned suddenly into a war zone with chaos and panic everywhere. They had to wait for nearly an hour for the emergency services to arrive, and so doing set up their own rudimentary first aid posts, doing the best they could, but being left with a huge feeling of guilt that they couldn't do better. So I'm going to leave it at that and go on with a bit more of the chapter tomorrow. But I think it's part of a theme of you know, a friend of mine said to me today, yeah, it's a bit like being in Groundhog Day. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly what it is, waking up, as Bill Murray did in the film Groundhog Day, to the same old, as we're all saying, same old, an awful day, until he actually chose to try and make it a better day. And maybe that's, I can leave you with that, to think about in this rainy day, certainly down here in Brighton, how we can make it a better day rather than the same old. Okay, see you all tomorrow. Bye.